Hello, hello, hello. My name is thayerperiod, and here is how I remade the beat to Dub by Yeat, originally produced by geogotbands. The first thing I remade was this chord pluck. I remade this in Serum, and here's what that sounds like with no effects. So overall, this is a pretty simple sound. Essentially, what we got going on is a square wave with 3 voices of unison. So here's just our raw square wave. And then we add 3 voices of unison and turn the detune down a bit to make it less wide and detuned. Next thing I did was add a low pass filter and then just automate that with our envelope 1. So this envelope 1 is controlling both the volume of our sound over time, as you'll see here. Fades in, decays a little bit, and then has some release. And then this is also controlling the cutoff of our low pass filter. So essentially, if you watch the progression of this and then the progression of this right here, it'll kind of show the sound closing over time. It really helps tame down those high frequencies as the sound plays and makes it a less like, it adds just like some nice natural decaying over time. So effect wise, all we have going on really is a low cut with an EQ, and then boost is boosting around 7,000 hertz, and our cut is around 275. We just didn't really need those low frequencies because this is kind of more of a mid-range sound. And then I also added a reverb with a mix of like 20%, and I didn't really tweak the size or decay, kind of just to give it some atmosphere. For our mixer effects, I really just added in OTT on 21% and then cut some of our mids and our lows and also the highs just to kind of tame it down, make it a less aggressive sound. And yeah, that is our pluck. The next element we got going on is this kind of triplet pluck. Again, I made this sound in Serum. Here's what that sounds like with no effects. So essentially what we got going on for the meat of this sound is 2 saw waves, one at a normal octave and then one pitched down a bit, and then they both have some unison on them. So our first one has 4 voices in unison with the detune turned down a bit. I'll turn our filter off to kind of just show that. And our second voice is pitched down an octave and has the level a bit lower with just 2 voices in unison. So it is slightly less detuned. It's still detuned, but just less so. So here's both those oscillators together. And then we are adding a low pass filter. Essentially what's going on with this low pass filter is we are using our LFO1 to modulate the cutoff, like creating this nice like wavy sound. And I don't think this is probably how he did it in the original, but this was the best way I was able to recreate that kind of like wow, wow, wow filter motion. There's also a little bit of resonance, as I talked about in the video from a couple days ago. Adding resonance to your filters gives it a nice kind of vocally sound that like moves. Like I'll show you the difference. Here's with no resonance, and here's with resonance. So yeah, just brought it to that sweet spot. We also have our velocity controls mapped to the level of both of our oscillators, allowing if we have a lower, like I'll show you in here, these lower like harmony notes, I have a lower velocity, so they are playing quieter than these higher notes. So loud, much quieter. So kind of it allows you to create some nice like dynamic contrast. And also I have this modulation lower on this one just so that our second oscillator is playing quieter than the first one. And yeah, that is pretty much the meat of our sound. For effects, we got just a basic chorus to add some nice width. Mixed around 30%. Didn't really tweak anything. Then another EQ boosting our highs and cutting our lows. And then we also are running it just through a very, very basic delay and reverb. I set the time of our delay manually to kind of help reinforce that triplet feel. Like I'll just crank up the delay so you can hear just how that sounds. And yeah, that is all our in-house effects. I will now go to our mixer. First thing going on is really just a cut around 384 hertz just to get rid of some of our extra mids that don't need to be there. As if you'll hear, Very muddy frequency, kind of yucky, just wanted to get rid of that. Then we're just running it through a reverb to make it kind of less abrasive and make it a little more subtle so it has a nice fade out over time instead of just immediately cutting off. And yeah, that is our pluck and our other pluck sound. Next, I'm going to talk about our lead. Shocker, I also made this sound in Serum. Here's what it sounds like with no effects. I will also note that this sound has actually been duplicated and I have it playing, it's the same sound, but it's just playing a lower octave as well. So I'm just going to be playing the high version, but the second one, the copy, is pretty much the exact same. As you can see, this one is very effects driven. Like that is really the meat of what makes this sound how it is, but I'll go over the basics of where we kind of start. So essentially what we got going on is two square waves. Both are being detuned a bit. We have some unison on both voices. This one is an octave higher than this one. Here's our normal one. And here's our really high pitched one. Quieter too, so it's less noticeable, but it helps add some nice high frequencies to our sound, make it a little more filled out. Played with the detune settings, turned them down a bit. And then the main thing going on is we have this LFO1 moving the fine pitch of both of our oscillators really fast. So if you look, and I'm gonna intensify this so you can really tell what that effect does. Essentially, like when it's really fast like that, it almost creates like a nice like FM-y type sound, but like it's really just the pitch going back and forth really fast. We're also FMing our first oscillator by our second oscillator a bit, just to add some nice high frequency content, make it a little more kind of scratchy. Then we are also running everything through a low pass filter, with the cutoff being modulated by our envelope 1. So again, this is controlling the volume of our sound, but also the movement of the cutoff on our filter. Just giving it a nice like a little bit of a just like a wow. Our resonance is also cranked up again to add more vocally sound. And yes, we are also set to mono, legato, and portamento, so our notes glide and they cannot overlap. So now let's get into the effects. First thing we're doing is running it through a low pass filter to get rid of some of that extra yucky high end, because there's quite a bit of that in this sound. Then we are running it through a tube distortion, just to help beef it up a bit. Then a multi-band compressor to pull everything forward. Then a hyper/dimension. This is where you start getting that kind of weird metallic-y sound. Then we're just running it through an EQ, cutting our low end and boosting our highs around 2K. Then finally we top it off with a nice reverb, just for atmosphere mainly. Now let's talk about our mixer effects. This is like another pretty big part of the sound. So first thing we got is a Camel Crusher on our British clean setting. I have the mix of our preset around 30% just to make it a little less intense. Then we are running everything through an OTT on 27%, cutting some of our mids and our lows, boosting our highs a bit. Then we're just running everything through an EQ, just doing some cuts, just to get rid of some like kind of yucky frequencies. Like, don't need that, and then also getting rid of some of that extra high end. Finally, we are just running it through another OTT on 29%. More compression is better. Just kidding, that's not true. It's case by case. But OTT is very good for kind of like sharp sounds like this and kind of taming them down a bit. So I cut our frequencies all a little bit, and it just kind of helped round everything off in a nice way. So yes, that is our lead. Now let's talk about our 808s. Nothing super crazy going on. I'm just using this Ellen's 808. Shout out him. His 808, very good. I use it in like a shit ton of remakes just because it's a very like clean thing, and it's very good for distorting and like tweaking, and you can get it to really. It's like almost like Play-Doh, like you can shape it into a bunch of different other kinds of 808s because of how just like nice it sounds. So let me first turn off all our mixer effects. So the first thing I'm doing is clipping it a bit. There's clean, then introduce some nice distortion. Then we just have it set to cut self so the notes do not overlap. Then let's get to the distortion. I am running this through a sausage fattener on 16% with a color of 15%. It just gives it some really nice saturation. I've talked about this quite a bit, but sausage fattener is like my go-to for 808 distortion. Like, listen to that. Beautiful. Then we are also running it through a Camel Crusher with our mix pretty low. We're using a pretty intense distortion setting, this Annihilate preset. But yeah, I have our mix low so it's not too overwhelming, but introduces some nice like high frequency content to the 808. Lastly, we have drums. Nothing super crazy going on. We just have this hat one with the multiplier tweaked a bit, pitched down a little bit, and then I removed some of it to make it cut off a bit faster. Then we also have this Dark Lord snare. And then this kick too, which is like my favorite kick ever. Been using it for years. It really works like just so well. Like when you find a good kick sample, really, you don't need more than one good kick in my opinion. If you find one that works well with the 808s you tend to use, like you are set for life. Then I'm just busing all of our drums to the mixer and then setting them to a drum bus where I'm running them through this Fab Filter Pro C2 Groovy Glue preset. Really good drum compression preset. Pro C2 is great. And then we're also just running it through a drum puncher in Radiator, which is a saturation preset. Really good. Makes your drums sound nice and clean and crisp. Have the mix around 50%, so it's not too intense. But yeah, that is everything. If you want the Serum presets or the project file or the samples from this, I also render out all the Serum presets as one-shots for people who don't have Serum. You can get all of that on my Patreon. I'll throw the link up on screen right now. Super cool. I try to make it a really good price, and also you get access to all of that stuff from all of my remakes, which is I think almost 150 now. That is a lot of remakes. I have no life if you cannot tell, but yeah, great way to support me, great way to get some new sounds if you're in the market for that kind of thing, if you're a music producer. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. Peace.